Botlenyana Mokhele, great to have you with us, Ms. Mokhele.
Thank you for having me.
Firstly, before we look at this extension, so the regulation's not coming into effect today, a little bit of a delay, but you must have seen the Vodacom case. So already Vodacom put out a release saying that you would pay, it wouldn't roll over, it would not roll over the bundles, it would roll over the data bundles, but you would pay. It has since backtracked, but surely this shows that mobile operators are already looking for loopholes. Are you prepared for that?
Yes, we are. I actually just want to start by correcting the misconception that there is an extension until the 18th of April. The regulations come into effect today. There are four key aspects of the regulations, the ones that refer to rollover, to transfer, to notification, to out-of-bundle billing are still in effect. What has been extended until April are minor refinements that we had introduced in February to give people more options. For instance, the usage notifications, the actual regulations say they should be, you should get notification at 50, 80, and 100. So there have been concerns that that might be a nuisance. So we had included a refinement that customers that don't wish to receive those notifications should be able to opt out. So it's those minor refinements that have been suspended until April, but the essence and the key aspects come into effect today.
Okay, so one of the important ones, let's start there, is that you can't disappear data. The mobile operators have to roll over your data bundle for at least a month. Vodacom, like I said, already looking for a way to charge customers to do that. It's backtracked, but surely there's more to come of looking for the loopholes.
Well, I wouldn't be in a position to talk for operators, but I can speak for
Are you annoyed as the regulator?
I can speak for the regulator. So we are aware of the charge that Vodacom was proposing for rolling over of data. In fact, they had actually filed a tariff in terms of the standard terms and conditions, indicating that they will be charging. They have since filed another supplementary tariff yesterday. The only, from the papers that we currently have, we're able to glean that the only bundle that won't be charged for is a 50 megabit bundle. And I think for us as the regulator, it's not so much the legality of the matter, but the morality around it. The fact that data is expensive. It's not so much what the law allows you, is whether or not in implementing the law, whether you would be working against the spirit of the regulations. And from where we currently standing, that even though the law doesn't explicitly say that you can't charge for it, it defeats the purpose of the regulations if you're going to charge for it. As a result, we have referred this matter to our monitoring and complaints unit. They are busy communicating with Vodacom. And based on the final outcome of the papers, then the regulator will then act.
And this was a good case where the South African public, there was a big backlash. So people are becoming more aware of their rights. Let's use this to really outline for people what they can expect now. The bundles must roll over. What are the other regulations that come into effect today?
Today, the first, which I think is an important one because it allows people to monitor their data usage, is the notification at 50%, 80%, and 100% intervals. The second one that I think is actually quite important is the prohibition to default people out of bundle charges, which people normally see as their airtime being eaten. So what the regulation requires operators to do is that before they can take you to out of bundle billing, which is significantly higher than in bundle, you are supposed to give your consent. And then there's the other ones that you've mentioned, the transfer of data before it expires, the rollover of data before it expires. But there's also another requirement where operators are compelled to educate consumers about these regulations.
Okay, and we're seeing that, although they're presenting it as wonderful things that they're doing.
Yes.
How much difference, so we'll talk about data costs, because that's the second leg of where you're going as a ICASA, but how much difference do you think this will make to consumers and their costs?
I think it will make quite a significant difference because the data usage rules in South Africa has always been seen as unfair. So what did the regulations intend to do is to put the power back to the consumer. The consumer now has a choice to choose how much they should be charged, if they should be charged more out of bundle rates. Before, they used to be just defaulted. The consumer now has a mechanism through which they can monitor their own data use. And more importantly, I think what everyone has been complaining about is data expiring. There are now mechanisms in place by way of rollover, by way of data transfer, that would minimize that impact. So for us, we view this as a reprieve to consumers and giving them the power to determine how they will use their data.
So at the very least, you should not be surprised by your data
Yes.
bill. When are you going to actively look at costs? At least we have a bit more competition in the market.
Yes.
But when are you going to actively start forcing data costs down?
We actually started the process when we made an announcement last year in June. The regulations are a first phase of a couple of measures that ICASA is looking to implement to bring down the cost of data. You know that as a regulator, we are an administrative body, so we have to follow certain procedures. So we started what we call a Section 10 inquiry into the mobile market. We've published a notice to that effect in December last year. Currently, we are gathering data from the operators, the due date of which is mid-March. From there on, we are starting with the inquiry. But as I've indicated, we are an administrative body, which means that we have to follow certain procedures. One of the procedures that we need to do is to publish a consultative document, which would then outline what are the factors that we're going to look into. We must have public hearings where all the stakeholders have an opportunity to mention and to have their say in terms of the data. And then we have to publish a findings document. So based on the findings document, then we firstly need to determine if there are operators in the market that have significant market power. They are dominant players. And we also then have to propose pro-competitive remedies that we will implement to deal with the price of data. We are anticipating that we should be able to then have a realistic determination of how much data should cost, and then use that to implement certain regulations to bring the cost of data down.
So in the meantime, the perception amongst many South Africans is that we're out of whack with global data rates, that we're being overcharged, that some of these operators are printing money.
Yes.
Are you in a position to deal with that perception at all? Is there any idea where we fit in globally or
Maybe
in terms of Africa?
I think let me attempt that.
Please.
So, you know, like when you do benchmarks, you have to compare apples with apples. You would find that even in countries that are perceived to be of lower levels of development than South Africa, the data costs are down. But it's a function of many factors. You know, it's a function of the regulatory environment, for instance. It's a function of the market structure, how many players you have, how many competitors you have. But ICASA, on a biannual basis, we publish tariff analysis. And one of the things that we have done as part of the analysis that we've done last year was to do a benchmark of different countries, SADC countries and BRICS countries, to see how we fare. We found from the analysis that those countries that have significantly lower data rates have actually released what is called high demand spectrum. They've licensed high demand spectrum in the 700, 800 and 2.6 band. So, like for instance, countries like Tanzania, their costs will be lower. They have licensed that high demand spectrum. But
so can we clarify this, because this puts the ball back in government's court.
Yes.
That has not dealt with digital television, that opens up spectrum, which is basically, you can correct me if I'm wrong, like frequency that cell phone operators can use to give you more data.
Yes, and just to maybe put this into context, as the regulator and as the policymaker, the Department of Communications is acutely aware of this fact, and there are currently moves to release the high demand spectrum. Last year, the ministry published a draft policy directive for public comment, with precisely the intention to set in motion a licensing process through which that particular band of spectrum can be licensed. So we are doing something about it as government. So beyond just freeing up spectrum through the digital migration process, there is spectrum that is readily available at the moment that we can license, but we have to follow certain procedures before it can be licensed, and those procedures have commenced with the draft policy directive being published by the minister last year.
Okay, so everyone will follow that closely. Final question. In the meantime, do you believe you've done enough as ICASA? So the rollover, I think it caps at a month, so you get 2 months rather than one. But is that far enough instead of an indefinite rollover? Some would say, why are we even being charged for itemized billing? That's like an invoice at the till that you should get.
Yeah, you know that the challenge for ICASA as a regulator is to maintain a fine balance between regulating and getting involved in the business practices of operators. So we wouldn't go, we could set rules that would give temporary reprieve to consumers and give them the power to be able to choose to roll over and such things. But we can't go to the detail of determining packages, because then we'll be veering into the space of business operations of operators. And I just think, like, within the mandate that we have, within the powers that we've been given, ICASA is actively working hard towards meeting those. And I think that this end-user subscriber charter, even though we're only focusing on the fairness of the rules, is a good start. I think it's a very good start, because you're now empowering people to be able to determine how they get charged, and you're also able to help people to control bill shock. And I just think, because the issue has to do with competition, the next stage has to be thorough, and it has to be procedural. Because as you are aware that we have a litigious, we're dealing with the litigious sector, so you have to be very careful on how you
ducks in a row.
Yes.
We have to leave it there, but please keep us updated. We'll follow this journey with ICASA. That was Councillor Botlenyana Mokhele. And yes, for many South Africans, it's the 1st of March, and for the first time, you can actually keep your data bundles from February if your mobile operator hasn't done that. She says there is a problem. We take a short break. We'll be back. Thanks for being with us on Full View.